The senator from Nebraska.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise today to speak about the National Defense Authorization Act. The process of negotiating the annual defense bill is one that has a long and important history on Capitol Hill. This afternoon, the Senate voted to pass the conference report, continuing a tradition of 55 consecutive years where the National Defense Authorization Act has been a must-pass bill for the United States Congress. People have a habit these days of assuming that Congress cannot pass major legislation. But this bill is a testament to the fact that when it comes to supporting our men and women in uniform, we work together to provide them with the support they need. I'm happy to say that this year we are carrying on this proud tradition. This year's National Defense Authorization Act was passed by overwhelming bipartisan majorities in both the Senate and the House. As a member of the Senate Armed Services Committee, I've been proud to do my part to help craft this bill and to be a part of the process. We live in a rapidly changing world, and unfortunately, one that presents a growing number of threats and challenges our military must face. Across the globe, we have witnessed the rise of dangerous new threats that make the mission of our warfighters even more challenging. In Europe, Vladimir Putin has shown a complete disregard for international law and order and threatens key allies and democracies that underpin the democratic backbone of Europe. In the Pacific, we face a nuclear-armed dictator in North Korea who murders his own people while threatening mass death and destruction to the United States and to our allies. In the Middle East, we have witnessed the rapid and fearsome emergence of radical extremist groups like ISIS, whose barbarism shocks the world. Their horrific acts of bloodshed show just how dangerous this warped ideology is, and the efforts of the men and women in uniform have played a critical role in the fight to stem this dark tide. Unfortunately, this same ideology of radical extremism is finding new followers in Europe, Africa, and Asia. These threats demand that we be ready. The fact is, the United States has faced challenges before, and if one thing holds true throughout history, it is that our armed forces will be called upon to defeat the enemies of freedom and safeguard this nation. For them to succeed, the United States Congress must provide the men and women in uniform the support they need to execute their missions. That's why I am so proud to stand before you today and speak about the National Defense Authorization Act. This legislation sends a clear message. Now is the time that we begin to rebuild our military. Contained in this bill is the necessary funding to start filling the gaps and ensuring our force remains the best in the world. This includes increases to the size of the Army, Navy, Air Force, Reserves, and our National Guard. It also means that new battle-ready systems are going to get the funding that they need to be put in the field as quickly as possible. On land, the NDAA authorizes funding for 85 Abrams tank upgrades and 93 Bradley fighting vehicles. At sea, it revitalizes our fleet, authorizing 13 new ships for our Navy. And in the air, it provides 90 new F-35 aircraft and 53 UH-60M Black Hawk helicopters. Across all of these domains, the FY 2018 NDAA authorizes funding for critical modernization priorities to help ensure that on every battlefield, the men and women of America's armed forces have the resources they need to complete the missions that they are given. I serve as chair of the Armed Services Committee's Subcommittee on Strategic Forces, and my top priority has been the modernization of our nuclear forces and the Department of Energy's nuclear weapons complex. This bill strongly supports nuclear modernization and makes a number of other key investments within the subcommittee's jurisdiction. First, the conference report builds on important provisions included in the versions that passed both the House and the Senate this year, and includes the administration's request for additional missile defense funding submitted earlier this month. In total, the bill authorizes an additional $4.4 billion above the level requested by the President when the budget was initially submitted to improve our missile defense systems. This includes a significant expansion of our ground-based mid-course defense system and authorizes resources to begin construction of another 20 interceptor silos at Fort Greely, Alaska. To further enhance the system's effectiveness, the bill makes valuable investments in the networks of radars and other sensors that support the system's operations. The bill also contains reasonable reforms to our military space enterprise that are designed to achieve a more streamlined and agile system that is more responsive to the needs of our warfighters. Furthermore, the bill improves the oversight and management of our nuclear command and control architecture. Often overlooked, these programs form the connective tissue between our national leadership and our nuclear forces. Their reliability and resilience are vital to the effectiveness of our nuclear deterrent. As the specter of great power conflict returns, and the threat from a nuclear-armed North Korea continues to grow, our missile defense and nuclear capabilities will play an increasingly important role in protecting our homeland. I look forward to continuing to work with my colleagues to further modernize and strengthen these vital capabilities to ensure that we stay ahead of the threats that our nation faces. Beyond the strategic forces portfolio, this bill recognizes that we must also rebuild our readiness and military infrastructure here at home, which is why we have included funding increases in the bill to support 90% of the requirements for facilities sustainment, as well as a significant increase for facilities restoration and modernization. This means newly authorized funding to restore and modernize facilities and infrastructure, ranging from barracks and hospitals to runways and hangars. But let's not forget the most important part of our effort in crafting this bill. That is providing for the one asset we can never replace: our soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines. The people who wear the uniform are more valuable than any weapon system. The dedication, sacrifice, and honor that they exemplify every day is why we stand here today and enjoy the freedoms that this country has to offer. For that reason, included in this bill is the largest pay raise for our troops in 8 years. We have also permanently preserved special survivor indemnity allowance payments to surviving military spouses. There are more than 60,000 Americans whose spouses have died on active duty or during retirement, and as a result of this legislation, this important payment will no longer exist on a year-by-year basis, but it will be preserved indefinitely. Make no mistake, These are challenging times for our nation as the world is becoming an increasingly complex place. Now more than ever, we are asking our military to tackle difficult problems and to face adversaries who consistently seek new ways to do us harm. No matter the day, no matter the situation, America's armed forces stand ready to answer the call and protect our nation. We need to uphold our solemn duty as members of the United States Senate and keep faith with those who wear the uniform by giving them the tools that they need. The 55-year legacy of passing the National Defense Authorization Act did not happen by accident. It has happened because members of this body know, and members of this body recognize, that this bill represents a promise to our service members. It is a promise that as you stand in harm's way, far from your families and loved ones, we stand with you. When you are deployed during a holiday or a special occasion, as many members of our own Nebraska National Guard will be this Thanksgiving, we stand with you. During late nights and early mornings, in the cold and in the heat, in battle and in peacetime, we stand with you. Passing the National Defense Authorization Act means keeping our end of the promise to those who serve. As a member of the Senate Armed Services Committee, it has been my honor to play a part in helping craft this year's bill. And I would like to thank our chairman, Senator John McCain, for his leadership in guiding the committee through the process. I would also like to thank America's men and women in uniform for all that you do to keep us safe. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor.